Yesterday was round 3 at the Olympiad, and at one stage it was looking promising that both the Open and Ladies team could pull off wins against our higher ranked opponents. Ultimately, however, the Open team got ground down to a 3.5 loss against United Arab Emirates, with David Sands drawing on board 3. The Ladies team fared much better and scored an excellent win against Egypt, with Jane Richmond and Linda Roberts winning and Olivia Smith drawing to take the match 2.5, 1.5. Today, I would like to present Jane's win against Women's Grandmaster Mona Khaled, with Jane playing white. Jane opened with e4, and we see a Rue Lopez defence. As follows. Black plays this rather unusual move, knight ge7. I think the idea behind it is to eventually play g6 and vianchetto the bishop, and then with the bishop on g7 it will be protecting the pawn on e5, so there'd be an opportunity perhaps to play d5 to free the position. Jane continues with normal developing moves in this opening, and we get the following kind of standard position where white's pieces are nice and harmoniously placed. Black responds to the rook on the d file by moving the queen to the unusual square of c8. I think this move kind of illustrates the drawback of black's opening, in the fact that the queen had very little places to go, and having to move to this passive square cannot really be very good for black. So let's continue. So some more moves. Again, h3 stopping the bishop developing to g4 rather. Black would like to exchange some pieces in this position. All black's pieces are pretty cramped, and if you've got quite a cramped position, exchanging pieces should relieve the pressure somewhat. So Jane decides to exchange in the centre and just continues to develop harmoniously. a6 putting a question to the bishop. Again, keeping pieces on the board makes sense here. So again, offering an exchange. This move, bishop here, pins the knight, and black reacts by moving away from the pin. So we instigate some exchanges here, and Jane offers the queen exchange, but black wisely refuses, playing queen f6. So swapping the queens seems to just lose a pawn after, for instance, queen takes, knight takes. Maybe rook challenging the d file makes sense, and there's a nice little tactic that you can overload this knight on c6 to win the e5 pawn with something like this sort of line here. Knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, knight takes, bishop takes knight, and the knight is on e7 was on pre, and simply say after something like this, white is simply a pawn up. Alright, reverting back to the game, so let's go back to after queen f6. White reroutes the knight to a more attacking square, attacking the queen, exchanges, and the queen occupies the d file. Knight returns back, developing rook gc8. It seems that black is reluctant to exchange pieces here, and perhaps wants the pieces on the board to keep the position complex. Rook g d8 rather seems more accurate in terms of at least you could sort of swap some of the major pieces. Okay, so queen b3, rook b8. So Jane prepares to double her rooks on the d file. Black moves king, perhaps to protect g7 or protect f7. Seems rather strange play from black, making these moves and very passively just sort of be very, very solid, but not actually doing anything active. This potentially be quite a dangerous plan. So some more moves. Queen c2, b5. So at last black tries to get some counterplay, although this is not a particularly successful plan, as we will see. So Jane fixes the pawn on b5, so this potentially could be quite a weakness, and notice that it's quite difficult to protect this pawn on b5, and indeed black is so concerned about this that now plays quite an ugly looking move, rook b7. This rook really does not have any scope, any squares to really go to from this square, and also it loses connection with this rook, so there could potentially be problems coming on the back rank later or something. So Jane attacks the pawn, forcing the rook to defend, and now Jane occupies the open file and notices that the a6 square potentially could be quite a nice square for the rook, which would pin this knight. So after been rerouting the rooks, bishop d6, rook a6, knight reroutes, and occupying the d file, and finally black decides to do something on the king side, which perhaps isn't so wise given that the fact that her major piece is inside. f5, rerouting the rooks, f4, knight d5, and here, under pressure, black makes quite a serious blunder by playing g5. She misses white's threat here that can just simply win material by taking on c7. So let's see how this goes. So knight takes c7, attacking the queen. Notice the bishop cannot take the knight because it is pinned by the rook. The queen is pinned. Therefore, rook takes is pretty much forced, and rook takes bishop, and we end up with a very, very nice position for white. Pawn up, pieces all lovely coordinated on the d file. Black is in real trouble here. So after queen c4, Jane simplifies into a winning position by winning another pawn, forcing a queen exchange. And now that we see that white's two clear pawns up, so the key thing here is just to avoid any counterplay for black, to make it nice and simple to win, and this is done very nicely. So let's see how we can finish the game off. So black tries to get active by attacking the c pawn, rook e6, preventing immediate take because the knight is on pre. Then the knight moves, perhaps not to the best square, since this allows a nice simplification. First, white plays rook g6 check. This is quite accurate because it will force the king further to the corner before initiating the exchanges that follows. So king h7 takes the knight, rook takes rook, knight takes rook, rook takes c6, and king f1. In this position, actually, black resigned. It's a pretty straightforward win. Two clear pawns up in a rook ending with no counterplay. Generally, is a resignable position. White will simply march the king to the centre, protect the pawns, and use the rook to attack pawns, and also then begin to march the pawns towards the queen in the square. So, an excellent result for the ladies team, who've now got 2 wins out of 3. Today they've got a very tough match, and they're playing one of the top seeds, United States, so that'll be excellent, and we should hopefully see some great chess there. Thank you, goodbye.